Hey, it is your buddy, Peace and Harmony with you here today. Much love going out to all the beautiful empowered harmonizers. We are zooming in and focusing in on a great viewer question, and that is to look at competition. Competition with a narcissist, a psychopath, someone who has really a pathological sense of their own self-importance, coupled with a lack of empathy, really is some of the most simplistic ingredients that create a very palpable tension in a relationship with these types of individuals. So you might consider them very competitive. These people, they just have things to do. They're so important. So you get this sort of swinging in a competition with a narcissist. Swinging meaning there's a competition, meaning a winner and a loser, that is defined in these relationships. So unfortunately for a narcissist, and I know we kind of, group those together, but I think for our viewers here who are looking for help, they're looking for support, they're looking for understanding, they're looking for knowledge to be well informed and to make sense sort of over this sort of personality bashing that they do, either outright or subtly and covertly, which creates a tension, a palpable tension with these individuals. And sometimes tension is good. It's excitement, it's focus, it's determination, it's discipline. All these are great aspects of the human personality, the human condition. But so is humanity. So is compassion. So is understanding for another. However, in the mindset of someone who is severely competitive, deep underneath their exterior. So we talk about a lot of moving parts here, and I've talked about how we need to do a series and really draw things out for you. We're going to be getting involved in that. But one thing I want to really emphasize to you is, what is the downfall sort of the narcissist? Where do they trip themselves up? And it is in the area of competition. Unfortunately, when you talk about competition, we're separating winner from loser, winner from loser, winner, winner. So they're very threatened by, I'm okay, you're okay. We can go at this together. They, instead of having like friendly competition, which is support, you're growing, there's something positive about you, there's something that you're that's important to you, a passion, you've expressed this, or it's a natural. The problem with these individuals with narcissists and competition is that they will subtly push you down to rise themselves up. They always want to have sort of this gap. That's their playing field. They want to have this area, which is a gap. And so when you try to meet them in the middle, there is no hand in the middle to greet you and pull you forward, just as you might have done for them. So there is no equal measure of back and forth. There's always going to be an I'm better than, smarter than, whatever, stronger than, more of a, there's always a best-ist. There's always a long-ist. Most this. There's always some sort of element. They're very leery of sort of cooperation, harmony, sort of collaboration. And they're always sort of looking out of the corner of their eye, but they're sussing things out and making a predetermined sort of outcome that's strictly for them, so them alone. But they don't ever want to give credit to the support people. That, for some reason, does not sit well. They don't feel that they can hold their own as they are. Even though they do, they're sort of propelled by this sort of threatened insecurity that I have to outdo. And this can be a very positive aspect, but for people, but detrimental to relations, bonding, attachment problems. Bonding, which means we're coming together, kumbaya, you got something, I can listen. Because the narcissist, I think because when intake came in before listening, they could not process. In other words, what was going on would have been either so explosive, so overwhelming as they interpreted it at earlier in their life, so that everything is sort of judged differently than is truth. So the problem with a narcissist in competition is judgment. And judgment, there's always, like they talk about in the Bible, if you're always focused on other people, you have an external locus of control. And meaning, like, when it comes to be focused within, they go, oh, no, I got to act out. I have to act. I have to spring. I have to launch. I have to fight. I have to flex. I have to fluff. Whatever their knee-jerk reaction is, it creates sort of an obstacle in their relationships. So even though their relationships could be wonderful, supportive, even help the narcissist win, the narcissist is very wanting to not give credit where credit is due. In other words, because of the mirror neurons, because they lack they're very threatened by sort of meeting you in the middle. You have something great to say. You have a great outfit. You have like there's something important to you. You will feel that it's felt on deaf nerves. It's almost like it's being blocked, like a volleyball game. Black, and in other words, they don't want to play. They don't want to play well in the sandbox with others. They want to scoop all the other dust, whatever it is, sand, accomplishments, cars, houses, money, bank accounts. I mean, they want to sort of build it all up and just be like, look how little you have. So it props up their sense of being able to sustain. They have an insatiable need for power and control. So these people are really like the personality meat grinders. They basically just grind you up and spit you out into little patties that they can say, you're a patty or you're a this, but you're not a person. So the problem with the competition is that you don't stand a chance, even though you are. And this is where where the brainwashing, the gaslighting, and those people who have been in these relationships either sustain themselves through this competition, this back and forth. Basically, there's always going to be a finger pointed. You try to help, you follow their needs, and then they bash you in the face and say, well, why don't you go focus on something else that you need to do? Why don't you pay attention to your own thing? Why don't you... So they're always sort of putting the blame on others, and they're not allowed. They feel very comfortable with others sort of spreading their wings and being like the best that they can be, because people have a flow in life, meaning you have a flow to accomplish, to do. You have a momentum in life. It's that momentum which is blocked. It's always sort of, it's not received and processed and said, oh yeah, man, or oh yeah, girl, oh yeah, X, fill in your name. There's not going to be the oh yeah and sort of equality. You're not going to feel, you're eventually just going to be sort of crawling, climbing to get to their love, to get to their eye contact, to get to their embrace, to get to your validation. People are starving then for attention in a relationship with a narcissist. Even though they might be a great audience, the narcissist loves an audience. They want to control. They want to be able to predict. They want to push a button and then the lights come on. Push a button, you laugh. Push a button, the water comes on. They want to be in control, but the problem, and this is where they could really help themselves, is that you don't always have to be in control. There's a situation in the personality that confounds it or confuses it. That every time a feeling comes up that challenges their position, even though it's not a real challenge. In their mind, they're crunching it down, and they're like all ready to, to punch. They know how to play from other people's insecurities so well. They know how to manipulate. This becomes a lot of pressure. This becomes a lot of work. The narcissist is very invested in this propaganda or the mask or the facade. But the problem is the narcissist can't sort of back down from the facade and sort of just be. They're afraid of what they might feel. And it's not necessarily what people might do. They're afraid of what they might feel. They might feel that they're too small. They might, even though they're not, they might feel that they're insignificant. They might, even though that they're not, they might feel that they don't have the light on them. Even though they do, they interpret these things. In other words, they feel that they're being sort of hit with, they're going to be pulled and yanked off the stage. They have this sort of threaten. And a lot of times, this can be a very endearing quality for someone to sort of always, because then how that's turned around as a manipulation is the narcissist or the psychopath is someone who doesn't give you a fair shake. They don't give you the compliments. They don't give you the feedback. They don't say, man, you're awesome, girl. You're awesome, man. Like, congratulations for you. No, they will withhold that. They won't. So the problem with a narcissist, it's not always what they do, it's what they don't do. So it's very difficult to suss that out and to know that when you're in the midst of it. It's like being in the midst of a tsunami and being like, oh yeah, like maybe we need some shelter here. Like it's an emotional tsunami. It's a physical tsunami. All of a sudden, you might find out and then, there's these weakening emotions then that come with the relationship. Meaning, it's going to come in here, and this is where it's going to break you down. You're going to start to hunch over. Check your body language. You are not defined by the narcissist's insults. You are not defined by their manipulative, dirty looks. You are not defined by their smile, by their accomplishments, by their whatever airtime. You can't get a word in edgewise. These are the telltale signs that this is not a healthy relationship, and it is okay to say no. It's okay to say, I am not defined by you. Even though the narcissist wants you to be defined by them, there's always a them in the you. So in other words, you can't, the challenge with life is to realize that you need validation, you need eye contact, you need to be with people who are supportive and who can bond and have a healthy connection. This really is this coming together. And I keep doing this because there is a meeting in the middle of truth. And that's sort of gut to gut. Okay? It's not, it's sort of gut to gut coming together. And the narcissist, oftentimes, they have in their repertoire a need to put down, a need to assign jealousy, a need to sort of defame another. And then other people are walking in here with the tar and feathers, and they're going, I don't know what happened, peace and harmony. I was supportive of them. I did this, I made their dinners. I became a great cook. I became a great lover. I became a great artist. I became a great educator. Like all this that people thought that they wanted this narcissist to witness that. The other and the individual, they want that validation, approval, recognition from the narcissist. The very one thing really that they're not going to give, and they are really not capable. That is the problem. There's an incapacity for them to sort of simultaneously share the stage, share the light, share the divine, share the view, share the great meal. They're going to reach over, take a piece of your steak. they're going to reach their elbow in and point a finger in and say, it's because of me that you're here. You're here. They're never ever going to sort of credit you for the work that you've done. So a lot of people go through this sort of gaslighting and brainwashing effect, which they're, even through repetition and experience with this individual only, they're sort of evaluating yourself by this one incident, even though there's been a number of other incidents that show that you've made a great meal, that you've been a great lover, that you've been there for them, that you're a great communicator, that you're good at your job, you're good at finances, you're good at communication, whatever it is. They're always going to say, you're crumbling here. They're going to speak that out into existence. And so people take it on in the relationship. They take on more than their fair share of guilt, of trepidation. And then so if you're with them long enough, you will become fearful. The relationship will breed fear rather than serenity and accomplishment and moving forward, progress, dancing in the moonlight, riding off into the sunset, cheers at whatever, the accomplishments that you envision for yourself. They're gonna hit a kind of emergency stop button. It's not going. Even though it's still going, the reel is still going. They won't let you have, they won't let the other person sort of speak out and allow you to come into being. I know this is very esoteric, but it is existential. In other words, you cannot fill up the room. You cannot hold your own. They won't let you. They're always going to say, well, you know what? Those carrots were a little soggy. Even though you made this wonderful meal that might have taken hours, preparation, shopping, cutting, all this that you've done in preparation, they're not going to see that. They're not going to know that. They're not going to feel that inside. So that's the problem. The narcissist has this sort of wheel going, which really they have an ineffectiveness of putting the brakes on. We're talking about the emotional brakes, the brakes on the lips, whatever it is that just keeps going. They're going to keep, no matter what the situation, and they feel like they always have to save the day. I am the best. So they always have this tug of war, which they will continue to exasperate, and it will become more pronounced in the relationship. So, meaning that you're always going to feel, meaning you can cover it up, you can try to, execute and do all these behaviors to sort of get their approval. So the problem with a relationship, which is normal, natural, it doesn't mean that you're insecure, but in the problem with these types of people who are narcissistic, if you want to read that, they have a toxic sense of self-importance, meaning, they're always going to sort of hold their head above you, and the other thing is they're trying to manipulate your understanding of them. They always sort of want to be in control of what you see, feel, and you can't arrive at your own conclusions. They always want to stop that, block that. So even though before you might, so then there becomes these really negative, bad emotional habits, which then begin in the repertoire, which have a seed moment, which you need to just go back to and revisit. That's the miracle of the human mind, is that you have the ability to think about what you're thinking about, and understanding where you have set that into motion. And for the narcissist, they're like on autopilot. If they can keep that going, if they can keep that working, then they're always going to rely on that. And it's always going to work until it doesn't work. Until they have the narcissist injury. Until they have something that goes on. They didn't get the deal. They have something that didn't pan out, which is like normal for most people. Most people have to pick themselves up and pull, and then figure it out themselves. Come back to life, come back, but then no, they're going to always sort of say, so-and-so did this, so-and-so did that. There's always an external locus of control. And see what it does? If they're always pointing the finger at someone else, they have no responsibility. It's the ultimate irresponsibility in the game of life, and how to play it, basically. They make it's all, for play. They don't ever really sort of play for keeps with people. There's, and so, but if they do, they're going to want to sort of keep people in a cage, in the aside. And the problem with competition is it's like, let me pull this quick move on you, and then they exit. So the problem is that in their repertoire, they're always going to have an out. And you don't play, usually people don't play like that, meaning I'm gonna keep this going until all of a sudden, one day, there's too many clouds in the sky, there's too many whatever things that happen to them, something that goes on in their work. All of a sudden, you're gonna get the kick in the shins, you're gonna get the kick in the butt, you're gonna get the slap in the face, you're gonna get the lack of communication, the cold shoulder. And then, of course, the other, what did I do to deserve this? So people then usually try to look back and change themselves, instead of changing the people that are around them. So people go through this whole, accommodation for them. Oh, if I, and they do this in the name of love. This is, becomes, in the extreme, it is denial. They're denying how good you are. They're denying how nice you are. They're denying how sweet, all your efforts. Instead, they're keeping you in the dark. So that's a tactic where, and then this is the problem, where people go through devastating loss. Instead of being able to process it and go, oh my gosh, let's see what happened here. Oftentimes it's like a shell shock. People are sort of so stunned, and sort of haven't been in this terrain before, that they don't know what to do. They're sort of like in a rock in the middle of the lake and go, well, I can't really walk, there's no walkway. I can't really swim, there's too much muck here. In other words, they become paralyzed emotionally. They second guess themselves. They sort of get themselves very, very stuck. And this is when the narcissist goes into regression. And they'll go into some other sort of regressive behaviors that feed and reinforce that negative blaming. So then this narcissist, instead of people saying, well, yeah, this happened, and then now what? Instead of being defined by them, you need to define yourself. This might be new. You might not have ever really strengthened up your definition of yourself, your I am. No, it's all about how can I support, and you have been sort of conditioned to be this way or to live this way if you're in sort of society the way that it's sort of currently now. In other words, when I studied back in school, one of the things we had to do is get some space away from society. In other words, hey, what does success really mean? Is success really a fancy watch? Is success really a great car? Is success really a great haircut or the biggest hair? I mean, now, if you don't have your hair out to here, I don't know what's wrong with you. I mean, do you see how the bar is always going to be moved? You're looking at these other constraints that are outside of you, which the narcissist is trying to always sort of get a leg up, get their stiletto heel in someone else's mouth, so that they can then be like, my shoes are bigger, my voice is larger, my butt is bigger, I've got I'm fatter, I have more of a presence. Whatever it is, they're going to sort of always push their weight around until they need somebody, and they're going to be like, hey, yeah, and then oftentimes, the people end up getting a lot of not their fair share of emotional bruising. You have to look at the settings, and realize that this is the ploy, this is the tactic, this is like in the game book of what they do. Meaning it's not anything about you that is impure, wrong, can't hold your own, but you might have been taught that. Meaning you could go to class and literally say, I don't have good enough fingernails. You might have memorized that. I don't have good enough elbow skin. What? I don't have good enough, all these little things that, so in other words, you're looking at the big picture, and then they're going to distract you with, an insult. And meaning it will just bash all of your composure. So meaning your presence. So a lot of people then can't hearken back or come back to alignment or presence because it's a very scary, unfamiliar, or I can't make it out of here alive, peace, and harmony. They've had so much damage. They've had so many emotional bruising. Their head is like this, and because of so how do you come out of the depth of manipulation? And the problem with seeing through, you have to see through their manipulation. Do not be defined by their manipulation. Do not be defined by their looks. Do not be defined by their lack of communication. Do not be defined by their lack of texting. Do not be defined by their lack of being upfront with you and being upfront with others. So they're always going to sort of compartmentalize people. And this is sort of part of their tactic. In other words, this is going to be in or out, in or out. And then the narcissist tries to move the carrot and define you. You're in or you're out. You define yourself, okay? And you are not responsible for the narcissist outbreaks, outbursts, lambasting you, throwing mud, throwing spit, throwing, even worse, throwing mud, throwing rocks. If men throw rocks at you, if women throw rocks at you, allow that to build the very street with which paves your successful future. When men throw bricks, when women throw bricks, allow it to be just another brick in your path moving forward to your greatness. Your greatness oftentimes cannot simultaneously coexist with their greatness. Why? Because they're threatened. They are not upfront. They think that they need to be this way, do this, and then they can then look down and say, see how small you are, see how petty you are, see how stupid, see how, and they'll allow other people, when they ghost other people, I think this is what a lot of our viewers are going through, is this sort of ghosting. Meaning, you have been more than meeting them in the middle. You have been more than asking for the date, asking for the show, asking for the kumbaya. You've been more than upfront, communicated. Oh yeah, and they'll string you along. What does it mean to string you along? Act as if. But there's a front, a facade, which is not the reality. So you're interacting with the facade of them and not the real of them. This is called ghosting, where all of a sudden they deflate, okay? They deflate. And they have to realize that they have to check some things out with themselves and do some things differently. Oh, wow. The narcissist does not like to be in this wedged situation. They operate oftentimes on attention versus being relaxed. They're afraid. They will be too sarcastic with others. And so they don't really be real with themselves. So they have a very difficult time just being real, normal, ordinary, or feeling that way. They don't like to feel like a human. They want to be superhuman, larger than life. Well, eventually things are gonna, I mean, look at all of the, people who have been in show business, and then they say, oh wow, we didn't hear from them because they had this illness, like Ashton Kutcher. He's a rare illness, all these people. Hey, guess what? Your body will do things. If you're relying on certain things like the external, those things will go into dust and fly off, into, and basically can be gone in a poof, but then what? I mean, so not that saying that's what is, but realize that you are not ruled by their breakdowns. You are not ruled by their game, their competition. You are not defined as a pawn. People then have this negative self-assessment. I'm a nobody. I can't do anything right. I can't cook. I might as well not do this. I might as well not go out. And then pretty soon, that person is then conditioned themselves according to the fallacy, the erroneous thinking of a narcissist. Then you're living your life basically on the emotional wake, the emotional waves that are knocking you down. You're basically saying the waves are knocking me down when there might not be any negative waves. Everything might be okay, and then just keep plodding along. But oftentimes they are very prone to being possessive of a title, of whatever. Meaning there's always something unattainable with them, and there's going to be this gap where you sort of can't quite connect with them, and they leave you sort of swimming. I thought you were here. Oh no, I'm over here, and then you go, and then over there, and then you're basically like woozy. You cannot focus. People are dizzy. They get disoriented. They don't know where their own mission is. They lose the vision. This is because of that fallacy, which means it's false, instead of the real, which is everything is okay. But the narcissist, they have a sort of like an obsession, obsessive compulsive disorder. They have a compulsion, meaning even though everything's okay, they want to eat more. Even though they're full, they want to eat from your plate and show you that you didn't buy the dinner, they bought the dinner. They want to make sure that they give you their interpretation of the play because they were with you at the play. You might have bought the tickets, but you might find that they're not so friendly. Like when you do something great for them, and you're thinking, you're bending, oh, they're going to have this reaction, and they don't. So you've always given them this reaction, like you're consistent, you're there for them, but then they're going to downplay those qualities because they can't really be the same. They can't equal that. There's always going to be an inequality. And the narcissist sort of always lives in this unequal. And they love being unequal. So the problem is the shadow. Then you'll always feel that you're sort of in the shadow of them. Or you don't even have your own limelight. You don't have your own flickering of the holy candle in front of you. You don't have the same attachment to the sunset. Your desire, what you see in a beautiful setting is boring to them. You might say, oh my gosh, look at this glory of nature. Like everything is just springing forth here. Everything is green and luscious, and the fish are jumping in the sea, and the breeze is perfect, and the sun just through the trees is magnificent. And then they'll be saying, ew, look at all the gnats here. You'll be in these sublime moments, and you can't sort of coexist. You can't share. It's so important for you to be able to flow and have flow in your life. But the narcissist sort of keeps a lot of blocks, a lot of edginess, a lot of 90-degree angles. Next thing you know, okay, the relationship's going this direction. And you found that you're really flexible, and they're like, and the problem in the relationship is that they're showing you, oh yeah, I'll give you a little ounce of support, and you've given them all this other. And then they'll be sort of like, oh, when it comes time to share things, poof, they're gone. It's kind of like, there's a certain type of betrayal, deflating, that comes, the ghosting, the brainwashing, the disorientation. And I think it's because of the disillusionment that the narcissist sort of paints into the relationship. So it's not your fault. It is not anything that you've done wrong. But the problem is that people have been in this type of arrangement, this type of relationship, that they don't feel that they know anything else or can do anything different, even though they can. You can learn another language. You can learn the computer. You can learn fitness. You can learn to cook. But there's this negative self-assessment that sort of comes with a narcissist package. If you buy the ticket, so unfortunately, they dupe a lot of people. The problem with coming back, I think, from this sort of competition is the duping, the duplicity, meaning the two-facedness, meaning what you see is not what you get with a narcissist. That is not sustainable, okay? It is not sustainable to be in this type of relationship. So a lot of people then define themselves by the toxicity or the smog of this person. And they're saying, I can't see, I can't live here. This is inhabitable. They make that assumption about the whole of life. It's this existential hurt, this existential bruise, jab in the ribs, ouch, in your solar plexus, your I am. The sting is right here. Here is where you have to inhabit within yourself. People start inhabiting their throat, their reaction, or they invest a lot in other things that they think. They invest in a lot in hair extensions. They invest a lot in a car, flashy rims. Hey, follow my watch all the way to the restaurant. They're like flexing with like this small glass. See my watch, and in other words, they're trying to pull the energy off of anything else and sort of use that as a tool, an emotional tool to sort of wedge you off of the rootedness that you have, the rootedness. So there's a rootedness that you own. You own. You are rooted. You are rooted all the way to the center of the earth, okay? I'm sorry, but you can't believe the fallacy, the ghostedness of the narcissist. You can't believe that sort of shock and sort of disillusionment and sort of disarray, meaning everything is sort of disarranged. Like there's, who moved my microphone? Who moved my, and so there's this sort of bewilderment that can befall people, and they fall over, because of this. They can't compose. They can't come back. In other words, where they go, they can't go composed next. In other words, there's a falter that they will go through, and they will never admit this. So if they could come clean and say, oh my God, but come clean in a way that they can then stop that cycle for themselves. In other words, if they can come back and say, like, wow, I don't need to live that way. I don't need to prop myself up. I don't need to, I puff up my chest. I mean, there's all sorts of music that, reinforces advertisements, businesses, everything. There's a lot of reinforcement that keeps that sort of narcissist lie going. What was that song? I puff up my chest. So who's the guy if he doesn't puff up his chest, but that's just acting as if. Well, what about just being, so you are a human being. And that is okay to be, okay? So, but the problem is that the competition will shred you till you can't say, oh, there's my shoe and my boot. That's my self-trust. There's my my pants that I'm going to put on, and that's my self-esteem. I value myself and what I've been through. And this is all going to be in my best interest, and I can understand it to be this way, and I don't have to freak out to myself, freak out on myself, or freak out to others. So the narcissist will have their emotional freakouts. They will be, and then their whole world, meaning, and then making it your world also, meaning like they want to rope you in. You can't have an inlet of your own. It's always boxing people out, even though there are certain people that they should be boxing in, meaning, come in, brother, come in, sister. They're not going to be at that level. That is the problem. It leaves a devastating effect sort of in the wake of this. And people then feel like a shell, empty, loss of a vision, depressed beyond words. And you have to realize you have to then go no contact with that whole melodrama. But the problem is then how do I come back to it? So people say, well, if, they don't know themselves in relationship to life or in relationship to themselves. So you have to then be able to draw back and stop that emotional habit of being defining of yourself on the outcome, meaning what does someone else do? What do they say? How do they act? So regardless, you're like a man or woman of steel, of self-composure, of alignment, of your energy, being on top of itself. I mean, people are, putting, who has stuck their neck out way more than necessary for other people? How many people have bent over backwards, gotten themselves into an emotional pretzel to help take care of somebody? How many people, have, been around a lot of chaos, and sort of always had to factor in this need then to create the same. So in other words, they're going to create the same with which they've been around, even though they can rise above it, or that might be the goal of their life, is to embrace it. But the problem is that there's a negative self-definition that comes with lack of empathy. So it means that they're not able to see you sort of as a person. They don't want to. They're scared. They're threatened. And then you're going to feel like about as big as the size of my pinky fingernail. You're going to insignificant, minimized, non-important, even though that has nothing to do with the truth. That's going to be the feeling. That's going to be the reflection. That's going to be the interpretation. So it is okay to have a different interpretation than the narcissist. It's okay to see things differently. It doesn't make you less than, insignificant, ugly, whatever all the aftermath ramification that they want you to feel. So but you are in control of you. You look right here. I mean, I've had neck surgery, okay? I have had fusion surgery. You guys might have seen me. At the hospital downtown, I had a huge collar. Talk about someone who's always trying to help others, be supportive, and, so it'll have a physical manifestation in your body that will throw you out of alignment. Watch your just holding yourself up, not all puffed out, but just being for that moment, at that crossroads, at that moment, and then see them, because if you're so used to being in that outside locus of control, bring it back into that internal locus of control. Internal. your eyes sparkle, your heart flutters, your toes twinkle. I mean, all these different things when you are just there. You can turn the ship around. But the narcissist will tell you, you don't have an emotional rudder. You don't have your hands on the switch. The narcissist is always used to pulling, all the little levers in the soccer game, the wiffle ball. They're always going to try to block you. And, so this can be an important I am to reconfigure. Meaning that competition on the daily, on the minute. So just think of how long you have been exposed to this, and then have mercy and compassion on yourself and go, oh wow, because of this, you might say, well, because of this, it made me what I am. But I am. And you don't have to define that. I mean, you're in control of this is what makes you who you are, into what you desire, what you dream, what you want. Stop playing minimized. Stop playing in the crumble. Stop playing with your head down in the sandbox. Change who is around you. Change the feelings that are around you. Your feelings emanate from you. I recommend in the book that I'm working on, going on an emotement, meaning a date with yourself, okay? And feeling what you want to feel. And how do you handle it? It's like a practice run. It's like a mock date, okay? It's like I'm going to pretend as if. I'm going to bring out. So in other words, that which you feel is lacking. I feel small. Okay, that's a feeling. Let's work with that, okay? But even though you've got 580 trillion cells that are working at 1 million miles a minute, and you've got 22 lengths of intestines to help you, and you have a brain that has been evolved over millions of years, and you're saying that this isn't good enough, that you're saying that you're small, that you have no opportunity, that you're in the information age and you can't help yourself. It's a feeling of learned helplessness. So you can say, okay, I had a learned helplessness, or a learned hopelessness, or a learned, sort of indebtedness, so you have something then that you have picked up, i.e. learned. I mean, you could be an expert in low self-esteem. I mean, might graduate with honors in a PhD with low self-esteem, and you can, talk about it to others. You could even teach low self-esteem to others if you wanted others to be brought down with you. So here we have this up and down, right and left, this polarity. So realize that oftentimes there's this polarity of two times. Is it Pepsi? Is it Coke? Or is it 7-Up? Usually, the narcissist is always going to make it seem like there's only these options for me. It's Coke or it's Pepsi, when there's a lot of other options that are tasty, that are flavored, that are healthier for you, that don't, corrode your teeth, whatever. In other words, there are other relationships for you other than this binary thinking. Thumbs up, thumbs down. Smile, smile not. What about this polarity? Why are you living in this plain black and white, boring, just dead environment, okay? It will deaden you. It will deaden your spirit, okay? I feel out of it. I talk to people, peace and harmony. I haven't been able to leave the house. I can't even get groceries. I can't go to my work. I can't, I'm crying by the printer at work. When I'm driving, I can't take my sunglasses off because tears are streaming down my face. I'm crying at the grocery store. I can't shower and bathe myself because I'm so hurt. And then there's all these different sort of I can't take care of myself sort of situations. And it becomes really a control mechanism. And so this deadened feeling and feeling of being sort of ghosted, or that this competition, and that you're take that out. Remove the labels, remove the judgment, because people then have this in their body. This is what they have taken in. Your body is like a sponge. You're absorbing so much from your environment. If you slow it down and could give it credit, the narcissist wants you to put blinders on. Don't see how good the other person is. Don't give credit where credit is due. Don't reinforce. Don't give them eye contact. So these narcissists, they will use manipulation. And then people then sort of, how could I have fallen for this? How come I didn't get further? And then, all this, there's what we call repetitive or intrusive thoughts come in. That is a byproduct of these manipulative relationships. So when you're on ruminating thoughts, when you're on intrusive thoughts, it's generally because of a battle, a war. I mean, you're suiting up emotionally, like you're in the Middle Ages, like you're ready to just go hardcore, guerrilla style, or you feel that you don't have the guerrilla to take on this guerrilla feeling. In other words, coming back, you have to realize sort of the learnedness that is taught in the toxicity of the relationship. When I was in college, we studied a lot of sort of what they called comparative literature in translation, Japanese literature in translation, Indian, the Upanishads, the Lao Tzu, the Tao Te Ching, all these, psychology, all these in-depth human development, child development, all these different developmental stages, which is self-actualization, which is the natural flow or sort of blooming, if you will, or coming of your personality, which oftentimes is shortened. The life is shortened if you're not sort of being okay with yourself, if you don't have that sort of those bottom foundations met. And there's a difficulty to be in those bottom areas, those foundational areas, simultaneously with a narcissist. It has to be bigger than life. They can't just have a car. It has to be a car that's barely they can afford. It doesn't have to be a house. It's a house that's ginormous, that no one else, that they are always trying to use to sort of prove that they're good enough. When you really don't need all that, the you are good enough is inside. I remember there was a store, Carson Peary Scott, you'd go in and they'd say it's all inside. That's a strange marketing technique. And people would, everything you need is inside the store. But everything you need is inside you. Oh, but that would not make for good business. If that's the truth, because then what about perfume smell? You smell so bad. What about, you smell bad, put this on. You're unattractive the way you smell. Put this on, guys, girls. Or you're too rough around the edges. You're just good with wood. You're a dum-dum. Or you're, just, and they'll minimize. There's always the minimizing, and they'll always try to sort of make it seared in your mind, like a brand, this was the most, and they'll always sort of try to control when you have control, instead of you saying, you know what, I'm not living that lie, that fallacy. But instead, it's hard to say that and own your truth simultaneously when you're in that sort of competition. You're always, they're always trying to edge others out. And yeah, some narcissists, toxic people who will walk all over for you. You'll walk up in the morning and you'll have Louis Vuitton written all over your face because your heart or your head just happened to be where they're walking. Ha ha ha. And then I think why it's so difficult for people to sort of bounce back and come into fullness, and bounce back is because they feel that it's an indelible, that they will never make it. If people really discover who they are, that they'll never make it, that they won't be looked at the same way. They're trying to control the way people look at them. Stop trying to control all these different things. You cannot control everything. Where the raindrop hits, where the sunlight is, where the grass blade is going. You want to try to control, where the lightning strikes. I mean, good luck. You're going to set yourself up for failure. So the narcissist routinely sets themselves up for these mini I'm a failure moments. So they literally just to prove it to themselves so they can keep in a regressed state. So if you're in a relationship with these people, you will learn where you're trying to be progressive and move things forward, healthy. They're in a regressed state. Learn what the regressive behaviors are of the narcissist. Oftentimes, we can go into that in another session. But the way the narcissists, they beat themselves up more than sort of the competition does. They go through, and they will go through regressive moments where they are on edge. They can't just be, they have to keep sort of this level of tension because they feel if they don't have that, then they sort of lose control. They lose who they are. They lose their I am. Well, who am I if I don't have this insecurity? Who am I if I don't have this worry? They'll and so it'll become, and then who am I if I don't have this anger? If I don't control everybody with my anger? Who am I if I don't control everybody with my car? Who am I if I don't control everybody with my perfume? Who am I if I don't control everyone with my pain? So it's kind of like M. Scott Peck, The Road Less Traveled. He talks about, and I remember in college when I had a toothache, and I remember in college, you get all sorts of like strange illnesses. You walk up at, you have to go to the student health center, because kids go through, in your teens, your 20s, you're going through a lot of growth spurts, and you're basically studying, you're pushing your body to the limits, all these all-nighters to cram for the final, and next thing you know, you've got influenza, 104-degree temperature a couple days prior to your final. I mean, and then you miss out that class and you can't graduate it. Life happens. It's okay. But the narcissist, I think that they feel that their identity, who would they be if they weren't like this? So they have this sort of, they want to sort of cling. They're very clingy to their insecurities. Oh my, what if, and so they'll try to control it and say, see, nobody likes me. I told you this wouldn't work. And then they go off on their own and they try to prove when something else there could have been a totally different outcome that they will never know. They could have had a happy marriage. They could have had a healthy career, the income, the travel, all these different things, the whatever, but they black it out. They throw an elbow. They throw a punch. They throw a fist. They knock their lights out. No, now is not your time to speak. How many people have permanently felt that they lost their voice? This is not true. This is an interpretation this is the feeling that human beings get when they are in a state of learned helplessness. Okay? And because you can't help them. They will not change. You can't change people, but you can change the people that you are around. Okay? You can't change them, even though you might have done a lot of changing for them, and you're thinking, oh wow, it might be equal. But the narcissist, they think like this Sinead O'Connor, no one compares to you, but it's like no one compares to me. They're like They need to hold on to, and then they're going to come walking back eventually when they found out that those sort of self-sabotaging ways didn't really get them where they wanted to go. They don't self-actualize. They hit a roadblock. They feel stuck. Okay, just because you can't get a fancy car doesn't mean that you're stuck in life. Just because you don't have or whatever doesn't mean that you're stuck. That oftentimes is merely the interpretation. It has nothing to do with truth or your power in life. You are powerful. And I think what scares people is that you are powerful beyond imagining. You are powerful beyond beyond the limits that you have tested. People set their own limitations. I'm only going to walk 2 blocks. I'm not going to walk, I am too, people set their own limitations. But oftentimes limitations can be the very thing that you need to grow in where you want to grow. I want to read more. I want to do this more. What about you? Oh my God. All I can say is I can't think about me. I'm just so beladen. I'm like laden with, if you could pour gravy on you, people just feel like their head is in the gravy boat. I'm just laden with sorrow. I mean, they are just drowning. They can't get, a hand on something permanent, and that they're, and sort of pull themselves up and then see that everything's okay. That's an internal, everything's okay. It's raining out, everything's okay. So you have to go through and then stop the behavior of putting all these obstacles in your place, because the narcissist lives with a lot of, obstacles, blocks, things, defense mechanisms that will have an effect and impact on you. So there's a dynamic that you need to feel and own yourself, regardless of what's going on, what they're doing, what they're saying. You need to sort of detach from that whole assessment and then come back into my own. Come back into your own and say, I do not need to compete to evolve and to grow and to be happy. I have control over self. I am captain of my destiny. I say where things go, and that's responsiveness. This responsibility is often termed boring by the narcissist. You being responsible, you being good looking, you being accomplished. You might be so conditioned defining that situation, that B state, as negative rather than as a positive. You're not falling for the trap. You're not falling for this. You're not going for the trouble. Okay? When you stop doing that, you realize, wait, I am in control. They don't have control over me. I'm not falling into the trap that they have set. And the trap can be set for years. Popcorn, pretzels, a coin, a date. But then there's this over here. There's a whole deluge. There's a whole sort of valley that they never want to go to. And you're like, let's come to the depth of this. And let's look at this. And all these, oh no, so there's all this other richness that you have within you that you can experience. And it can be and feel different. But it's breath by breath, okay, in that moment. And it's going to, eventually, if you want it enough, and you listen to these videos enough, and you console yourself and give yourself a pat on the back and coaching enough, and you say, you know what? I see the manipulation and I'm not feeling bad now. I see the manipulation and I'm not sending the reaction text. I see the manipulation and my head is still held high. I see the manipulation and I'm not over drinking. I see the manipulation and I'm not overeating. I see the manipulation and I'm not feeling bewildered. Okay, I'm not feeling lost. There's you can lap it up into, these sort of pulling you down and allowing you to be, and then rising states where you're then feeling fuller in power of sort of like coherency and cohesiveness between what you want and what you're doing, and allow that to then develop and have success. And to say, and not define yourself by a lack of success with any sort of relationship. So not defining your I am. So we're talking about your identity, meaning who you feel yourself to be. Okay? And who you feel yourself to be is okay. You know, you eventually have to come in a realization. I call it an aha moment. There used to be a band called Aha back in the day. Do a lot of running. Aha but I call it like an aha moment. It's the same as when Einstein sort of was developing, I think, the mathematical understanding of gravity, and and like seeing how how an apple would fall from a tree versus like a feather. So he did this by his observation. So it's okay for you to observe. It doesn't mean that you're a bystander of life. You don't have it going on. Whatever all the negative definitions, get rid of it. Put it an X through it. How done do you want to be? Only you can say. Do you want to be burnt to a crisp and say, yeah, peace and harmony. Now after 20 years, I'm fried out and I'm burnt to a crisp and I'm ready now. You might need, but only you can kind of determine when. And if you should have said, well, I should have done this yesterday, don't beat yourself up over it. You're doing it in the now. In other words, it is okay to inhabit the now, which is different from perhaps the other forces, which means you, with all those forces, are now here, and that's okay. You don't have to use any definitions right now. You can just allow and enjoy. But see, that almost, being that they feel guilty. It's a guilty pleasure. I can't do this for too long. I'm always going to have to go back to. So don't worry about all those different, thoughts. Allow them to go. And eventually, those incessant thoughts based on fear will cease. And then you'll allow yourself to enjoy and reflect in, and then be in a healthier space, because that stress is a crusher. That stress to always impress, and then people then find their lives. Then I have all this that I thought was going to impress the narcissist. I have done all this to have this and have them. So you might have to kind of come back to the drawing board. You might have to throw out a lot of stale negative ideas. You might have to get rid of a lot of junk thoughts, a lot of clutter in your environment, a lot of things that you sort of brought you to where you were that you no longer need. So you have to realize that what's in your environment is always sort of feeding back, from them. And you might find that you don't always want to drink from the fire hose with these people. Eventually, you might be pulverized enough and pounded down enough. So what's very helpful is to sort of shake, and you can just sort of release the energy and ask for all the negative energy that is pulling you down to shake it off and get it out, and get it out like this. So a lot of people, this is I think what people do who do a lot of hair, touching a lot of people, even picking up a lot of their negative emotions, they need to shake it off. And then, you can even get like a rattle. And, there's a lot of healing sessions where someone can help you to release the negative energy that is not yours, that you don't want in your energy field, that you don't want in your repertoire, a lot of residue, a lot of leftover sort of reactiveness. How are you going to inhabit your space? Okay? Are you going to always be like this? Are you going to have a neck surgery? Are you going to learn to have your head and what it means to have self-esteem and what that feels like to carry that in the body? So your elopement date might be a date with self-esteem. If I really respected myself, this is what I would do. If I really was thinking in my right mind, this is what I would do. And you allow yourself to come up with different options and different solutions in the course of that time that you set aside for that directive, that you set aside for that. Now I'm working on this feeling that, and whatever it is, it's always plaguing you. It is, and then you fill it in. Your deficit is enough. Whatever you think you don't have, your fingernails are pretty enough. Your toenails are okay. Your elbows, they look fine. Have you ever been around someone who's like, oh, you can always tell, oh, look at your elbows. I can tell you're aging because of your elbows. What? Why are you pointing? I mean, what? Why? We're not even talking about that. We're getting together to have, some shoot the breeze or whatever, and then you're trying to throw in an insult. So these insults, I think you've got criticism and then you've got insults, okay? And oftentimes the big tool of competition that the narcissist uses is insults to you that are meant to be personally and get you like emotionally paralyzed. No, you're not emotionally paralyzed. It's time to come for the emotional meltdown. Stop being frozen. Stop, realize that only you are kind of holding yourself back. Is it really too hard for you to go to the grocery store? Is it really too hard for you to read? Is it too painful for you to open up the noodles and make a dinner? Is it really too painful for you to do this? If so, then get help. If if your diet is trashed, you can't, you're engaging in eating, all junk food, all processed food. Come back, to some better ways. And we're going to go into that in other videos. But realize that oftentimes that feeling of being competed against, insulted, having to bounce back for this person, eventually you don't need to play that game anymore. And it doesn't mean that you plateau. It might mean, that relationship, you're growing beyond while that other person is staying there. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that in future videos. This is your buddy, Peace and Harmony, with you here today. And I hope that these videos do help. Please share, please subscribe, and for goodness sake, please donate for more great tools, videos, discussion, and support. And remember, you are not defined by the insults of the narcissist. You are not defined by the elbow jabs. You are not defined by the scarring moments, okay? There's more to you than that, and that is okay. It's okay to, to develop and enrich yourself the way that you want to be, and that is okay. And allow yourself to be in that be state, and then you can allow to pick and choose where you go and how you feel and what you do. But the moment can be a good way for you to get a start. For example, before we wrap up, for example, that emotement, you're not talented enough. You're not a good writer. You're not a good pianist. You're not a good trombone. Take out your instrument and have a musician date and go with yourself and just as the musician, and then just go through and just go and allow yourself to be, if you were that musician, that woodsman, that carpenter, what would you be carrying? What would you be looking at? How would you be feeling? How would, and stroll, walk with that in mind. And I want you to practice that, because what you're doing is you're reconditioning your body to feel, be, and behave in alignment with those healing truths, desires, and be states. Have a beautiful day.